Good morning. My name is Don Schmitt. I'm an interior designer in Cleveland. In keeping with my desire to celebrate Cleveland and the many, many wonderful and interesting people and events that are occurring here all the time, I am continuing on my adventure around town, meeting with people that I consider to be world-class people doing things that are interesting, way beyond anything that one might imagine. And they live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I think that's what makes Cleveland such a great place for me. I love living here, and I think it's because of people like Sarah Littlefield. And we're going to meet with Sarah this morning and chat with her a bit. Sarah's here now, and I want to talk with her about some of the adventures that she's currently involved in. Sarah is the executive director and co-founder of the Townsend Learning Center. She started that 34 years ago, so she was probably about 2 years old.
Exactly.
And when she started. And Sarah, thank you so much for being willing to participate in this with me. Tell me a little bit about the Townsend Learning Center and what prompted you to start a learning center, number one.
Okay. Shall I do that?
Yeah.
My mother and I were both teaching reading in two adjoining school systems, and both of us were frustrated with kind of like having one hand behind our back all the time by the school administration. We weren't really allowed to do what we wanted to do to help people with learning disabilities. So we decided, we kind of cooked this up in the kitchen, that we would start a tutoring center where we would work one-on-one with kids with learning disabilities, dyslexia, and ADHD, although that wasn't the popular diagnosis back then that it is now. So we were going to do it out of my mother's house, and I was going to continue teaching school for a few years until we could afford for both of us to run the center. But the problem was we lived in a parsonage, and my father said, no, you can't run a business out of the church parsonage. He was the minister of the Federated Church. So we kind of bit the bullet and rented some space in Chagrin Falls, upstairs, a little skinny office. And we started working with kids and adults right away. And it grew and grew, and I was able to quit my job and work with my mother for 5 beautiful years, where she did a lot of the testing and I managed most of the tutoring, and we hired about 10 other tutors. And it was great. She did pass away very suddenly of a cerebral aneurysm. And I decided that I would keep the business going that we had, and the rest is history. We've been doing this for all these years.
Wow, I see, that's an amazing story. And it started because you saw a need
Absolutely.
for a different way of teaching and a different way of learning for people, for specific needs of people.
Exactly.
And you know, one of the things about you that fascinates me and always has about you is that, you know, you're kind of out there. You're a bit of a fabulous character and a wonderful woman, and you're a big part of supporting all kinds of things in Cleveland, from ballet to art to the orchestra, all of it. You're everywhere.
Thank you.
I saw you doing the cha-cha at the Cleveland Orchestra one night. But anyway, no, conga line, that was it, not cha-cha.
Oh my God, yes.
But I think of you as a very unique and special person, and that part of what you do is an alternative learning kind of process. And I wonder, could you talk a little bit about what does that really mean, alternative learning?
Okay, I'd be happy to. Well, for one thing, all of us, if you just took a sample of a random 100 people anywhere, you would find many different learning styles. Not just what you think of as visual learning and auditory learning through hearing, and some people learning through touch and movement, but there are actually many, many kinds of learning. For example, some people need the big picture first. They got to get the whole thing and then the parts and pieces, whereas others are more linear, where they want to work from the details and then later draw a conclusion. So if in any random 100 people you have that kind of diversity, just think about learning disabled people who aren't being reached through traditional learning methods. They have even more diversity in their learning styles. So what we specialized in really was we would take a person and find out through questioning, through testing, through talking to their teachers, how do they learn best? And we would teach them that way, but the key was we would help them realize that not everyone's going to teach you that way. And so if you're a visual learner, which I'll bet you are,
Yeah.
then you need to shore up some of your auditory learning skills so that you can be more integrated. So I guess that's a long way of saying there's a lot of different ways to learn. And if you look at some of these kids that don't even graduate from high school, but make it big in their careers because they went online, or they learn through getting out there on the street and becoming streetwise, these people are alternative learners, and that's what interests me the most.
See, that's an amazing kind of thought process that brought you to that, and I think that is makes you uniquely qualified for what you do, because you think outside the box, and that's what makes you successful at what you do. And I think, I know that you have helped numbers and numbers and numbers of people in the work that you do, and are currently doing. You're still doing this. The Townsend Learning Center is alive and well, and lots of people are benefiting from your desire to help.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing, as they say. You know, there's another thing that I'm aware of that you have been doing, and I had heard that you were in Costa Rica, and I thought, oh God, another vacation. What's going to happen next with Sarah? You know, what country will she find herself in? But from what I gather, you were in Costa Rica because you've got a project that you're developing. And it's something called, it's about learning, story learning, something like that.
Exactly.
So could you talk about that a little bit?
I would love to.
Tell me about it.
I want to start with this little story because stories are my life. When I was a little girl, my mother would tell me a story every night, and she'd always stop right when, like at a cliffhanger place, like the little girl turned and went into a cave, and I'll tell you what happens tomorrow night. And she kept that kind of thing going for a long time. So here's how I first started using stories. This was such a poignant little story. I had a adult client who was about 30, and he was retarded. His father brought him in and he said, my son's retarded. And now his son was in the waiting room. The father was with me in my office. He said, my son's retarded and he can't read. Do you think you can help him? And I said, there's no reason why he can't learn to read, even though he has an IQ of around 80 or something like that. Let me work with him. So his father said, well, I don't have a lot of faith in this. And he sat in the waiting room, and I took his son into my office. And I started talking to him, and I said, tell me, what do you love? What interests you? What is your passion? Well, it was his dog. He had a Labrador Retriever. So what is his name? And I started writing, and he started talking. And I wrote, and he dictated all about his dog, and I typed it up. Actually, I had a early computer back then and printed it out and said, here, read this. And he said, oh, I can't read it. I said, you can read this because you just said it, so here. And I guided him through it, and sure enough, he remembered enough of what he had said that he could read it, and then we worked for the whole hour until he actually could read it. I took him out to the waiting room, and his dad was sitting there. And I said, here, Ben, read this to your dad. And he turned and he read it to his dad, and I get chills. His father, and he wept, and they hugged, they embraced. And that was like, I thought, whoa, this is perfect. So from then on, whoever I've worked with, I've always had them tell me their story, and that leads to Costa Rica. So I have a friend who has a school in a very poor town. There are poor towns in Costa Rica. And this is a little town called Potrero, which is near Flamingo on the Pacific side of, upper northern Pacific side of Costa Rica. And the school is for children of Nicaraguan families who come there and work as pool boys and maids and things like that, and they send the money back home. And so I said, let me have the parents of those children, because I wanted to try this with adults. I sent digital cameras down there, inexpensive ones from a drugstore. I had them take pictures of their homes, their children, their pets. And then we developed those pictures, and by the time I got there, I had the photos, and I had them tell me about the photos, and I captured that on my laptop and created worksheets, stories for them to learn English. So this whole project was for these Nicaraguan maids and pool boys to learn enough English so they could deal with the English-speaking tourists in Costa Rica. Well, here's the thing. I first had only 6, and I was a little disappointed. But I talked to the one, I had her tell me about her daughter that she had taken a picture of, and I wrote it up. And then the second woman came, and the first one stayed and listened to my interview of the second one, and we wrote all that up. And then the third one came, and the first 2 stayed. And by the end of the day, I not only had my 6, but I had 6 more. People were coming off the street to listen to this, and so I had to keep admitting more students into my little class. And it worked out beautifully because I was able to work on my laptop at night and print out their stories, which I finally made into a little book through iPhoto on the Apple. So now they all have their books, and here it is. Everyone has a copy.
So that's what this is.
That's what this is, and everyone has a copy. And this cute guy right here, there was one man in the group, and it was the husband of this beautiful woman. And he knew enough English so that he helped me with my questions, because I know Spanish from high school and college, and I spent a summer in Mexico. And this guy helped me when I couldn't think of a word. He could help me with that word. So
he saw the value in what you were doing, obviously.
Oh, he's doing it too. He was my assistant. This group that I met with down there have formed a little coffee clutch, and he is the recorder of what they say. And they're continuing the work, and of course I'm going back next winter, naturally in the winter.
So you live in Cleveland, Ohio, and you're actually helping people in another part of the world.
I am.
And you're able to do that because you, 34 years ago or whatever it's been, had an idea with your mother.
Exactly.
And it evolved into something very, I think I overuse it, but world class, because it's something that you're here in Cleveland and you're living a very good life and having lots of fun. I know you do have a lot of fun. You're very serious about a lot of things, and look at the difference you're making in the lives of people in some obscure place, and how that will resonate throughout the world. Just that positive energy that you brought to one little area of the world. Right. That's just amazing and fascinating. Tell me just a little bit more about your experience living here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, I love Cleveland, Ohio 3 seasons, and you know which ones those are.
Let me think.
And the 4th season, winter, I do like to get away, and hence the Costa Rica project is in the winter. I love everything about Cleveland. I love the parks, the orchestra, the plays, the Shaker Farmers Market. My friends, your parties are high on my list. I think Cleveland, people don't know how wonderful Cleveland is. And I have to say, downtown Cleveland, I spent the night downtown during the film festival so I could get up early and go to the early films.
Now, do you see what I mean about kind of crazy and always having a good time and really out there? Go ahead.
Well, so I was with my friend, not Bruce, no, my girlfriend, and we were looking out the window on a Sunday morning, and I said, Ginny, we could sleep on the street here and not get hit by a car because it's that quiet on a Sunday in Cleveland, downtown. So what I'm saying is downtown has its problems because it doesn't have a lot going for it, but the suburbs, all the surrounding parts of Cleveland, and the, Tremont, Ohio City, there are wonderful restaurants and so many wonderful things to do. I just love it.
And there's so much happening downtown now, with the 666 building being restored, and wonderful restaurants on Euclid now that are quite wonderful. So it's timing, I guess. Right. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It is.
Sarah, thank you so much for allowing me into your home today to chat with you about your projects, and continued good luck and success to you and your students in Nicaragua and all of your students right here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.